a different planet. You went to Ceres and Mars.
The moon.
And the moon, yes. Yeah, tell me more about that, like the daily life, do people...
Well, that was thrown in, from that point, I was sold into a program that was going to end up for the Mars Colony Corporation. And we went to training on the moon. It was not combat training. It was it wasn't as traumatic mind control, but it was a form of mind control, and it was about fight or flight response. They had knocked me out. So there were she dropped me off with two guys in a van. They gave me an injection, and I was knocked unconscious, and I woke up on a ship en route to the moon. I woke up back on the ship, and I had been on one many years before, during the mind control programming in '82. There was a trip to the moon where they did surgery on us. They did surgeries.
Yes.
Right before the remote viewing. Like during that, like once we qualified and tested that we had aptitude in the remote viewing, there was a trip to the moon in what was a triangle shape, like a TR-3B, what they describe as a TR-3B. Anyhow, then I went on to Peru and then Seattle. But then after that, when she dropped me with these guys, I was knocked unconscious, and I woke up almost to where we were going on the moon. The last 20 minutes, 20 minutes of the ride. And I was older then, and I remember it was the same ship, but it was different on the inside. It had more handrails in it. But there was a guy, like a military officer in uniform, that was, when I woke up, he said, "Whoa, you're awake now? You're going to be good for me?" He was like my chaperone. And I was to do what he said, and then he handed me off to people inside, and then I went into the classes. But all the programming was fight or flight response. It was all, literally, that's all it was. They were programming that in the event of an emergency or whatever, combat or whatever it is, when your fight or flight response goes on, that you wouldn't flight, that you would suicide. That you would, it's better to, and the programming was like, it would always come back to the same, it would have a big, long, elaborate movie. And then at the end, it's better to give your own life for your brother. That was how it ended. It's better to give your life for your brother.
Right.
No matter what. And they were all different movies.
Yes.
They would have a problem. It was a movie, and it would have a problem be solved. And at the end, it was you giving your life to solve the problem. And it was like, and it over and over again, it's better to just give your life for your brother. Why run? And then everybody die. And it was like that. And that was the programming.
Okay.
And it was straight up a military. It was a big room. We slept in with cots, and they tested us, and then we flew to Mars, and then it was on to Mars.
What was the terrain like on the moon? Were there?
Well, it was a building.
Okay.
It was inside of it on the building. There were no windows where I was. At the very end of the 20 years, I did look out a window. I returned to the moon base and did look out a window one time.
Okay.
But there was a big hangar. When we came in, there was a hangar, and there were people walking around. I couldn't see them that well because it was a big thing and it was dark. But I thought it was pressurized, but they could have had suits on. I couldn't tell. It was dark and they were far away. But there were a lot of ships lined up, little triangle craft, and I saw the hangar. And then there's an umbilical, like getting off an airplane. But the rest of it was just like being in an office building, and not a fancy one. A very Spartan office building was what it was like, or a hospital, if you will, without all the glass.
So you weren't allowed out. You weren't.
No.
You didn't have.
No. We always had an officer or a security guard. We always had somebody that told us what to do and watched us. We were always chaperoned.
Wow. And what did they feed you?
Sometimes there was regular food, like meat and potatoes kind of stuff. And sometimes there was like an oatmeal, like a sloppy, but, I don't remember a lot of eating there. It wasn't much to write home about, but I remember that there were meals occasionally there was a meal that was palatable.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was different all the time. Like sometimes it's just oatmeal that they'd give you, or like something like that, like a sloppy,
Mm-hmm.
grainy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, that's all I remember of that. I remember there was like a meat and potatoes meal that you had. There was like fake potato, like freeze dried taters, and then like a meat,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I remember.
Right. So there wasn't much enjoyment for you, or
No, it was a military. It was like the military, like being in the like boot camp.
okay.
It was not
Oh,
like every boom. You got up the day, you did the same day. They had it was a schedule, and that was that. And when they put us back at the end of the day, we had a big room with cots that we were all in, and you went right to sleep. They killed the lights. You were going to sleep, and
okay.
we were exhausted.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Wow. Okay. So from there you went to Ceres. How do you say it?
Well, to Mars. From there was to
Mars.
Mars. The moon
Okay.
went to Mars, and I
Uh-huh.
was there about 6 months. And the program that we were there that was in got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
It failed. We were a support soldier. For whatever the strategy was, they were trying to make instead of soldiers that were very trained and very expensive, they were trying to make a lot of lesser trained, less expensive soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to put numbers out, and then that way they could have a few trained, very well equipped soldiers and a dozen of us and go out. And what they found was that anybody that they were adversaries would adapt much quicker to that, and we were not very good for fighting at all.
Oh, right.
So it got canceled. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Wow.
then I was sold. Well, then we sat and did nothing for a
Yes.
month or so, and then they gave us aptitude tests
Yes.
to see what we were good for, and then I was sold off to Ceres Colony.
Okay.
I was what was it was skilled labor,
Okay.
like just above manual labor. Yeah,
Okay.
is what I call. I didn't. I tested for command. I tested for um, not command, but like crew, like
Uh-huh.
ship crew,
Uh-huh.
and didn't pass those tests. I barely missed them, and then I ended up being skilled labor, which was like refilling the oil kind of stuff,
Okay.
maintenance, ship maintenance, and then I was shipped to Ceres Colony, and they took us there, and I stayed there for over a decade. More than half of the time was on Ceres Colony.
Still in a military type base?
Yes. Well, okay. So I don't know the total number of civilians there, but there were big areas that were civilian. There were
Mm-hmm.
big areas that were people that were not in the military. They were citizens of the Ceres Colony.
Mm-hmm.
There were places I went that looked like a shopping mall
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't care to be because I wore a collar that identified me as a slave,
Oh,
and I would get treated as such. So it was kind of humiliating to be in, imagine being at your shopping mall. Um, but I would see people. I would see women pushing strollers and people that were in plain clothes that were normal. And they had stores and restaurants and, electric cars. There was electric vehicles that happened, and they had vehicles. They had um, like a ferry service that would go up. It was artificial gravity, and the ferry would rise up out of the artificial gravity and just have fans that pushed it, and it
mm-hmm.
would ferry 18, 20 people from one end to from far long distances.
Mm-hmm.
But where I lived, and the main hangar bay where I was, which was actually miles long, was very giant, very big complex, was all military.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I belonged. I was actually a part of their military fleet of ships.
Okay. So it was there that you had your first relationship? Was that right? Like where you found
Toward
love?
the end, well,
Yeah.
yeah, well, for the first 8 years or so, I had no freedom.
All
It
right.
was Groundhog Day. It was like living in a prison with a bunch of men,
Okay.
thousands of guys. You'd get up and you'd follow. There was a buzzer, and we would go, and you went into the showers. There was a small cafeteria area, It was this. I mean, I remember you'd line up with guys, everybody, a bunch of naked guys, and you had like 20 seconds to shower and get on, and then you didn't have any. It's not like I had a laundry or a wardrobe. I had a hook with my number on it, and I had my clothes for that day. And I would go and take off my pajamas and hang them up on the hook, and then put on my clothes and go. When I came back, my pajamas were clean.
Okay.
And go back in. You showered out, showered in.
Wow.
But from there, we rode a train to the hangar straight to your ship. It took you straight to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And that one eventually got decommissioned. I eventually got promoted, and I went into cargo engineering, where I kept track of cargo. I didn't do maintenance anymore. And at that point, I got money and was able to buy a train ticket into town or anywhere on Ceres. You could reach to anywhere. You could reach almost anywhere in the planet in 45 minutes.
Wow.
So, and there were daily passes on the train. It was, a few bucks, $4 or $5.
Money like, was it similar to what we have here?
No. There was paper money. You had the option of getting paper. Like, I would go, it wasn't a bank. It was a teller. It was a trade. We called it the trade window. It wasn't the bank though, but it was basically, imagine like an airport. Imagine you're in an airport where you're walking from gate to gate, and there's a window with a woman there, and that was the trade window. And ETs could go there. There were ETs that didn't have money, but that's where my money got deposited. The trade window at the end of the hangar, of the military hangar, my particular, hangar area. So at the end of that, it was a couple miles walk. I would take a train there, or sometimes we walked it, but it was a couple miles. And anyhow, so I'd go to the trade window, and there was a facial recognition service. So if you have a bank account there at the trade window, you could pay, I forget the maintenance, it was like $10 a month or $8 a month, and you didn't have to carry money. Everywhere knew it was you. There was facial recognition. So when you went up to something, do you want this? Yes. It would spit it out, and it would just deduct it from your account. It knew your face.
Okay.
So
there
were bracelets.
There was no microchip. There was no microchip to record your.
There may have been. So we did have implants. We had implants in us.
Okay.
Whether that was tied to the money, I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't want to spend the money. I didn't make enough money to buy that service, so I carried cash.
Okay.
Because it costs money. So I didn't have enough money. I was getting like $20 a week was how much. So for me to spend $10 a month on that service, it wasn't worth it at all. So I would just carry cash on me. There were bracelets that you could put on that would hold your money, that you could wave it and it would pay. Those bracelets were because there were ETs that don't have money. That would visit. And what they found was that they didn't tend to waste money. They weren't wasteful. So species that would come there and visit, they wanted to impress them into trade agreements and things. So there were species that had no idea of money, but they could register at that window. They got a bracelet, and everywhere they could access the machinery and make purchases. And it was just forgiven. The debt was forgiven because however they worked it out, I don't know. But because it was their culture. And what they found was that they don't go and buy a drink for everybody. Those kind of ETs, like that kind of culture is very frugal anyway. Everything's free. We used to be so jealous of them. We were so jealous. Be like, we'd always joke about it. Be like, I'm going to take one of those bracelets. You watch, I'm going to buy everything. Like we would always fantasize about that because it was basically an unlimited credit card is what that was.
Wow.
So we used to always joke about it,
Wow. And the restaurants and cafeterias, were they similar, like, and the food?
No. So there were restaurants that had real food, actual legitimate food that was real. So, if you ate meat, it was an animal at one time. But most of everything we ate was you'd call it from Star Trek replicated, printed, replicated, produced. We called it produced sometimes, good. But I think sometimes we called it the producer, food producer. It wasn't the replicator. Wow. For instance, on the ship in my day-to-day, you were forced to eat lunch. You could not eat lunch. If you skipped lunch, They would send you to the doctor, and you'd have to run on a treadmill and get blood work done. It was terrible. So you
Oh,
had to eat your lunch. They made sure that you had to eat, and you had to eat. It didn't matter how much your portion was for breakfast, but you had to eat something like a bagel or a muffin or a big breakfast, whatever it was. And there was a cafeteria after the showers. When you came out of the showers, there was a small cafeteria there, and you could just go grab stuff.
uh-huh.
But lunch you had to. And on the ship, on the mid deck of the ship, I worked on I got a map right here. I worked like the third deck up. There's a half deck and then a cargo deck, and then I worked right above the cargo deck.
Mm-hmm.
From there was another deck up that was the main deck, and there was a galley area which had the bathroom, and there was it looked like a microwave, and they were like little plastic bowls, and you'd put the lid on it and put it in the thing and press what you want. You had like, I think there were 9 choices, 7 to 9 choices.
Mm-hmm.
And all you had to do was hit the button, and you waited 5 minutes or so, and you'd have a very hot soup or whatever it was. It produced the food.
Right.
And
Yes.
that was our lunch. And it was always super hot. Like when you got it out, we had to wait. Like I would walk back to where I worked and eat it there and throw it away.
Okay.
But that was what I ate. That was my food. And then you could go and buy real food, but again, I did it one time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't that impressed.
Oh, right.
For the money that I spent, it was very expensive, and I thought, man, it's a whole week
Oh.
for a sandwich kind of thing, and I don't have any money, so I never bought that stuff. I would go and always get a water or I would buy a drink of something.
Okay.
But there were restaurants. It was a big deal there to have, they had a lot of restaurants. The front of the ship, the command crew had a better food replicator.
Okay.
They had a much better one than we had in the back.
Oh.
And it had 20 or 30 things. They had 3 rows of buttons.
Uh-huh.
And it had lots of different better food in it. It was just a higher quality one.
Wow. So it's quite hierarchical, as in, yeah,
Yes.
the hierarchy.
And to a science, they had it down perfect. They had perfected it.
Wow.
Like there was always the possibility of promotion.
Uh-huh. There
was always the possibility of demotion.
Okay.
You get what I mean?
Yes.
So there was always a carrot and a stick, and they had you motivated. Everybody worked very hard because they had it down to a science. They had it worked out perfectly on how to motivate you to keep working.
Wow. Wow. And what about the homes and the entertainment there?
Well, there was a red light district.
Right.
That I went to. Well, I went there not because I was a pervert or something.
Uh-huh.
I went there because I didn't get picked on.
Oh, right.
When I went into that district, it was full of people that were not uppity.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant or something, but that area people were more humble there, and I never got really picked on like I did when I went into public. When I went to where there were families, I always, even on the train ride there, you get up, you're standing over there. Like, it was humiliating. So I didn't do that. But they had lots of entertainment. I heard stories about their homes.
Uh-huh.
I never saw any, but I heard stories that they had magnificent homes.
Okay.
Like mind-blowingly, they had spas and things. The officers on the ship would always brag about going to the spa.
Okay.
So.
Oh, wow. So you still had your collar
and it would shock, and it was rumored that it would kill you, but we never heard of anybody dying from it.
Okay.
But they threatened and said that it could kill you if they pushed the button,
Okay.
But it would shock you, and there were times when we got disciplined that way.
Wow. Okay. I remember I had a dream where I was at a lecture or a workshop, and there was a lot of people. And then a group of us were walking back from going home, and it was about a 1 or 2 kilometers walk, like back home, in a group of us in the open air, and the sky was quite clear, and then suddenly it seemed like a paper cut. it looked like a paper cut angel with a trumpet coming down, and then I just had the word Ceres, like Ceres. Yeah. And yeah, so I wonder if that's not from my unconscious mind telling me something like Ceres. And since then, every time I hear the word Ceres, I always look and think, what's that about? So
Wow.
yeah. So I'll look further into that.
A lot of people are unaware that it even exists.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I get a lot of people quite often, and I do interviews,
Yes.
and in the comments section, people are, you mean the star Sirius? I'm like, no, it's the planet Ceres.
Yeah, yeah.
Right after Mars, it's in our solar system. It's a small planet.
Yes.
It's called Ceres, Ceres.
That's right. Yes, I had that word, and I know a company.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a health food shop, like a product's called Ceres, and then I'll look at that and I'll say, am I meant to eat something from there? And there's a community place, Ceres, like Ceres just kept popping in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Before I got my memories back, I didn't even know about it. I was aware of Ceres and Vesta. It didn't ring a bell.
Yes.
When all the memories came, then I went, that was Ceres. Like then I figured it out. Like as it progressed.
Oh wow.
When I thought about it, I went, and I went on to NASA website and I researched it. I went, oh wow, there it is. And at the time, so this was May of 15 that I got my memories back. The Dawn, there was the Dawn mission, went to Ceres, wasn't there yet.
Okay. Wow.
And so I was getting memories of it all, of the flybys and flying around it and flying up to it. I was getting all those memories before any of they didn't have any pictures of it yet. Then Dawn went there. When the pictures came, I went, oh wow, that's it. I went, that's where I was. And I could, the Okator crater, I hate to say if I'm saying it wrong, but I always remembered flying over it. There's a geyser there, and NASA doesn't say, is unaware of that, but it was a geyser.
Yes.
And when it went off, we flew by. We did a flyby.
Yes.
And the direction that we flew, so the direction we flew with the shapes in there was basically like a left to right. And I always remembered it like that. So when I looked at the picture of it, I went, I drew it. I've drawn. And then later on, NASA released a map of Ceres.
Okay.
And where they call the cryovolcano, the Alhana Mons, we called it Pyramid Base. The radio handle was Pyramid Base. And inside that crater right next to it is the entrance to the hangar bay. Down in they call it a cold trap. In one of those, it's a big crater and there's a bunch of little craters. And so here's Alhana Mons. Here's the crater.
Yes.
We would be right about in there was the entrance.
Wow.
When they released the map, the flight path that I remember going over Okator crater that I'd already wrote down went straight. You just had to go and kind of slightly turn, and it went straight to Alhana Mons. Like that's the path we would have took back if you get what I mean. Like if there was a geyser going off and we were in a spaceship that were going to fly by it and go back to our hangar dock where we were.
Yes.
That's the direction we would go, and I had already drawn it out and had that direction in my mind. But how do you sell that to a researcher?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
But to me, I proved it to myself. These are very intimate memories, very, very vivid. So not anything like a dream.
Yes. No. Well,
far more detailed than dream memory.
Yeah. And you could look at that map and say that I was there, like that's the point there, and that's really detailed.
Exactly. Which to me, this was another point that I thought, I'm going to look at this and it's going to prove me wrong.
Okay.
Which would have been okay. And all of it did was to prove me right. It turned out to be exactly how I remembered it.
Okay.
And it's been like that on and on. Every time I do something, every time I dig up something that I remember, it's kind of like it proves it.
Wow. In one of your other interviews, you were saying that the ETs or the people there knew that planet Earth was, the humans there were in the dark about what's going on, and the news that we receive is only about Earth, whereas over there the news is about what's going on in the solar system. So I was just wondering whether you have any memories of what some of the news, about the other planets in the solar system, what they broadcasted.
Well, okay, so I didn't have it. It's not like I had a TV. So it was like innuendo. It was what we talked about.
Oh,
It,
okay.
there were times when they intercepted sports from other planets, and I guess other planets or other colonies in the solar system. There were sports,
Yes.
and I was bitter. I was bitter, very bitter about not having a television.
Okay.
I did not have access to media, and I was very upset about it.
Oh,
I was
right.
very bitter. So when I got to the point where I could look at it, I remember sitting in a bar, walking down the street, and they had a sporting event on, and I was waiting on somebody I worked with, I forget, and I sat in a bar, and I just had lemonade, I think. It was lemonade. And there's a sporting event on, and the screen was, fancy. And I remember somebody saying something to me like, "What do you think of that?" Because he knew what I was when he saw me. He said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "I'm not even going to watch it." And I wouldn't look at the screen. I remember thinking to myself, screw it, I don't even want to look at it
Okay.
because I can't follow it. You know what I mean? It's not like tomorrow I'm going to follow up on it and see how it turns out. And they all knew, like I was listening to them talk and they knew everything about it. Like, oh, did you see last week? They would talk about something, and I knew that I would never participate. I knew that I would never have that. And so I didn't want to watch any of it.
Okay.
That being said, we did talk about it a lot, like like in our workday, like the water cooler conversations. We talked about the news.
Yes.
And there was a time when the leader of Ceres, and his title was still a Führer, but he had a different name. I forget his name. It was a German, like a military. Like he was a military guy, but he had a title of Führer. He was assassinated.
Right.
And they never knew, as far as we knew, they never knew who did it.
Okay.
And there was a succession of power, and there for a good 6 months to a year, that it was very unstable. The political structure on Ceres was very unstable. It was in the news all the time, and people were always talking about it. Like they didn't know what was going to happen. It was kind of like nobody had a contingency. They'd never given any thought to what happens if the government gets took over. There was a change of power like that. Other things in the news they talked about were other ships that explored. They would always say what ship had the record for greatest distance from our solar system. That was always fame. Like whenever a ship went farther from that colony or anywhere in our solar system, when a ship from our solar system went somewhere farther than anybody else, that was on the news. They would always say that on the news. We did it once. We had the title for about a month, less than a month, a few weeks. I'd like to say 6 weeks, but I don't think it was that long.
Okay.
And we had that title for a minute. And I never saw it in the news at the time, but we did have the title, our ship. Okay. But it was something that was constantly changing. We were constantly going farther and farther. And they had to have permission to go. Like you can't just willy-nilly travel to another galaxy and show up. They had to have permission and be almost invited there or a reason to be there. And that's how they extended the distance.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of other things that were in the news. Just exploration. There were a lot of times when they discovered new life, new forms of life that they would report on that. And a few other things, like they would say that they would always give like a progress report. And this wasn't the broad news. This was kind of like the military news. They would always give who is the most productive ship report, and that was always. And we just gave up on that. That we would never. That it was always a ship that was like a more of a battleship, more of an explorer. We were a cargo ship. We did cargo and trade. It was always the bigger ships. It was never going to happen to us. But they would always like, it was always on the news. Like you'd be in the elevator and you'd see it, or you'd get out and be waiting in the lobby and they would be, that was what was on the news there. Yeah, I can't think anymore. Maybe I'm tired. It'll come to me later, I guess.
Oh, sorry. Anything on Venus?
We weren't allowed to go there.
Okay. Yeah.
Germans on Ceres colony were not allowed to go to Saturn. They were not allowed to go to Venus. We were not allowed to go to Pluto. They were off limits.
Okay.
So they were off limits, and not only that, but on Venus, it wasn't even possible. They couldn't even go there militarily. Like whoever's on Venus was so far advanced that they didn't stand a chance, that they could not go near Venus. They were not of that level. Saturn was the same thing, but they did do expeditions and go to Saturn, or excuse me, not Saturn itself, but the moons around Saturn. There were colonies there, and the Germans did go there, but it was basically off limits to us. Pluto was a colony by an entirely different species, not humans. No humans were on Pluto, and we couldn't go there, and they were hostile to us. Like, I don't know if other colonies went there, but we flew by it and saw it out the window, but we couldn't go there.
Okay.
There was a lot of it cut up. It's kind of like if one company, like, remember during the Cold War with Russia?
Yep.
So if one country helps Russia out, then they can't do business with any of us or the countries that help. Like, they can't go to England.
Yes.
Like, a friend of Russia's couldn't go to England because we and Russia didn't get along. That's kind of how the solar system does business as well.
Right.
Is that the people that were friends with the German colonies could only go to German bases. People that were dealing with American colonies or whatever, the international fleet, they could only go to certain bases, and they had different access. It was all about access, and it was ever changing.
Yeah, so it's still very political.
Yes.
Political relationships, yeah.
With a more, and less of a politics, more of a military, more like military relationships.
Okay. Oh, just one more question.
Okay.
I know it's getting quite a lot, so yeah. Thank you for your time. But just one more question. I've always wondered whether you've come across ETs having humans as pets, but they love them as much as we love our cats and dogs.
Wow, that's a doozy. That's a big question. So we heard about it.
Okay. Yeah.
We heard about that there were. So the girls in the red light district would have sex with extra species. Interspecies sex is real, and there were some species that they didn't even have intercourse. As we think about it, it was a mental thing, and some of the girls were damaged greatly from it. They were forever broken mentally from it because it was a more advanced species that kind of saw us in a pet kind of light.
Wow.
And that was real. That was the real thing. And so, but they would come there, and there were times when they said that they were, I don't know the word, that they were given a gift, or like that it was something, that it was a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, there were times like that. And we heard about species that had those abilities that would take humans and keep them. And not as a pet, but as kind of like maybe your sidekick kind of thing. You know what I mean? Not like your puppy, but like a pet.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But it was more like a business transaction kind of thing. We heard stories about it. And this was like in the red light district, over drinks. We would hear people talk, we would talk about it, and just things that other people heard. Most of the higher, more advanced species want nothing to do with us. They want nothing to do with us. There was another level above, there was a few levels above the technology and the advancement of the Ceres colony. And they would come there and trade because they were always at their coat heels. They wanted to trade for technology. So they were always trying to woo them and impress them and bring them there. But only a certain level. After a certain level of technology, they wanted really nothing to do with us.
Oh, right.
The same way that we want nothing to do with the animals of the forest. Like my squirrel, I have a squirrel outside my house. I don't really care what it does. You get what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, that's more like the situation. And they were always looking for ways to kind of get a foot in the door. And it happened. There were times when there were emergencies that happened. There were times that we could anonymously give there were times that advanced cultures were not allowed to give products to other advanced cultures. So they
Mm-hmm.
had us do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know what I mean, for a trade, they had us go and do it.
Oh,
So we
wow.
would go and be like, hey, somebody dropped this off for you. Here's
Yes.
your thing.
Yes.
And so that was a mission that we did actually, I don't want to say often, but a couple times a year
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. We did a mission like that where we would take, we were an anonymous transport for higher developed societies. And that was a
Mm.
service that they offered.
Wow.
Um, but as far as like knowing it, or as far as seeing one, like seeing an ET come in with a person as a pet, I've never saw it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow, your memories are so vivid and so detailed and a lot, you've got a lot of memories.
It's neat because these are things that I would never think about
Yeah.
until I get the questions, and then I remember it. You know what I mean? The
Oh,
things that I don't think about it in my day-to-day life. So I
yes.
really like it when I get good questions.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, about memory, whether it sounds like memory isn't really kept in our bodies, it's kept somewhere else, like whether it's, in our
In my
soul or our
case,
Akashic records, I don't know, but
that has to be the case.
yeah.
I think it's a little both. I think you have your short-term memories or whatever, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that there are other things that you just get access to at certain times. Like there are people that, like people that are naturally gifted at things, like an
Uh-huh.
artist. Like,
Yes.
who's to say that's not a memory from some other life
Yes.
that they
Yes,
had?
that's
You know
right.
what I mean? Like a life memory. Like if somebody's a seamstress in one life and their next life they're really good at sewing. Like it's a memory. Who knows? It carries over. I mean, let's face it. I think everybody has a gut feeling that we're not exactly told what the truth is about us, what we are.
Mm. Mm.
And so in my case, I'm definitely wasn't supposed to remember what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I do.
Okay, yeah. Have you met Randy Kramer in person?
No, I've talked to him like this plenty of times.
Yeah.
Randy's a good guy.
Yes.
He's he's a straight shooter. He's a
Yes.
person that doesn't, he's got a short filter, and he'll
Yes.
tell you what's on his mind, and I,
Yes.
I really like that. And that's standard soldier stuff. If you did a career in the military,
Yeah.
that's kind of how they are. That's kind of how people are. And anybody that I've ever known that had a long military service
Yes.
appreciated it if you just get it over with and speak your mind.
Just
And that's how
direct.
Randy is. Yeah, and that's how
Yeah.
Randy is. And I hope I do get to meet him one of these days. He's really been a lot of help to me in things I've researched and substantiating things. He's really been supportive, and I look up to him a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And do you have a website, or do you offer
I
services or not?
I personally don't. I do Facebook. I communicate with a lot of people on Facebook. A friend of mine has a site called Truder, Trooder, and if you put Truder,
Okay.
Tony Rodrigues, then
Yep.
there's a collection of all my interviews that goes on there, or most of them, not all of them.
Okay.
And where we put the links, that way they're all saved there. And then it's
Right.
getting up there, 60, 70 of them, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Like I said, when you ask me questions, that's how I remember.
Yes.
You ask me things that I didn't expect to hear, so it jogs my memory, and it's really a good feeling. It's really a good therapy.
So yeah, thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure, Tony. You've been so generous with your time and the information. Very, very helpful.
Joy, it's been great. The great questions. I got to say, you're some of the best questions that I've ever had. So it's been really cool. I'd like you to make up some more if we do it again in that thing, and because
Yeah.
you kind of hit me from left field, so I didn't expect it, and those are the most enjoyable ones to answer.
Oh.
Even if I don't have an answer,
Uh-huh.
it's been really, really good. So I hope I want to recommend this. If you give me the link to this, I'll send it out to some people that I think would like this interview as well.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Great, thank you. And again, I think, your information really helps people. I think, more people than you know.
I hope so. I would
really,
hope.
Yeah. I think it brings comfort to some people, to give them some clues or answers to start their journey as well, to recover things if they're going through similar things like you did.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would know, and they just don't know that that it can exist. You
Yeah.
know, it's important to say to anybody that's watching this that doesn't know about the whole 20 and back, which if they call it your service tour, that the next day when I was put back after Ceres, the next day I woke up back in my 10-year-old body back in 1982.
Yeah.
Changed.
Yes.
I was a completely different person, and I knew something happened, but I couldn't remember at the time. My memories were blanked or, suppressed. And it wasn't until 2015 that I got my memories back, long after the 20 years was over. So that's what happens. Everybody, whenever you see the alien abduction, they go, the car shut off and we saw a UFO fly up, and then we don't know what happened. Then we woke up and it was an hour later.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And people they can take you, and you can do a service. You can do 20 years and put you back. And people don't know. And
Yes.
98% or 95% of the people, 97% of people never have a clue and have no memories.
Yes. But they're confused. Like there's that confusion that they.
Well, they're different.
Yeah.
They're different.
Yeah.
They feel different. I feel different. I don't know why. Because they lived through trauma. They were traumatized.
Yes.
And 20 years of experience is 20 years of experience, no matter what it is. You're going to be a different person. So I was changed. I did not fit in with the kids anymore after that.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll say hello from you to Guy and Michelle.
Please, to Guy and Michelle, they've been the best. I miss those guys. I love them terribly.
Yeah.
And I hope I get the fortune to come back there and hang out with everybody.
All right. Thank you. And
okay.
Till next time. Yeah.
Very welcome. Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.